I work at a gas station in the center of my town. My shifts aren't always the same, but I find myself often on overnights and early mornings most of the time. I'd been there for a whole year at this point, and honestly, I didn't really have many negative things to say about it. It was a perfectly normal, middle-paying job that only required me to stand in one spot for 8 hours and talk to the occasional customer. On this day, I was working an overnight shift, the typical 10 to 6. Although it's usually not too busy overnight on the weekdays, it's worth mentioning that it was raining a decent amount this night, so I was really expecting it to be a quiet night. The first couple of hours, I sat at a chair behind the register and just waited for anyone to come in. I got a few people that paid for gas with cash, but by 12:30 or 1-ish, it was basically dead. There were no customers coming inside, and barely anyone even getting gas outside now. With absolutely no customers to be seen, I went around the counter and started fixing up the shelves a bit. They weren't too bad, but it was just something to keep myself busy. As I was doing this, I had my back facing the windows. That's when I noticed a headlight's glare through the store. Someone pulled in to the pumping stations. I didn't even bother to look. There was nothing interesting about a guy pulling in to get some gas or whatever. I kept on tidying up the shelves for maybe 10 or so minutes before I unconsciously glanced out the window. The car was still there by one of the pumps, with a man standing right next to it. As soon as I looked over, the man shifted away, making it obvious he had been looking at me. After seeing that, I felt a bit weirded out, especially since they'd been there supposedly pumping gas for a whole 10 minutes. I went back to the counter, then checked out the window again 30 seconds later. I could see the man getting into his car. The headlights flashed a few times, like he was trying and failing to turn it on. Eventually, he got it running and drove away in a real hurry. I stood there and just kinda looked out the window for a minute. Something really didn't seem right about this. I got an idea and pulled up the recent transactions for the pump he was at. The last time it was used was hours ago. He had been there for 10 whole minutes, not even pumping gas, doing nothing other than watching me through the window. I stayed behind the counter for a while, just trying to wait out the rest of my shift. A few more cars came and went, and then it got really quiet again. Around 3 o'clock, I heard something happening outside. The rain was really heavy at this point, but there was a rhythmic shuffling noise on the ground that was barely audible through it. It sounded like the footsteps of someone sneaking along the side of the building, moving toward the back area. I tried to look out the window, but there was not a good view. I did notice that no cars were in the parking lot or by the pumps though. I quickly left the counter and went to the back door. It was a heavy metal door that had no windows or anything on it. I pressed my ear up against it and listened as the footsteps got closer and closer until they were right on the other side of that door. My eyes moved to the handle, waiting in silence before the handle turned slowly and slightly. It got caught by the lock and it went quiet again. Almost a whole minute passed by when I heard a man's voice grunt in frustration. A sharp sound slid across the other side of the door. Footsteps followed soon after, leaving back and going around the side of the gas station. I ran back to the front, waiting to see the person walking away, but I didn't catch any sight of them. Acting quickly, I picked up the store phone and dialed 911, hoping to catch them before they got too far away. I couldn't see exactly what was happening outside, but I did know that someone had just been trying to get in through the back door, and they must have been intending on doing something bad. When the cops arrived, they didn't find the man, but what they did find was a car on the side of the road, less than a fourth of the mile away. It was the very same car I'd seen earlier, with the man who had been watching me in it. It had run out of gas, it had mismatching license plates, and turned out to be some guy's missing car from 2 states over. The other thing they noted was a long scrape across the back door, made by a sharp metal object, most likely a knife or blade of some sort. Knowing all these details, I think I actually got extremely lucky. The man was probably on the run already if he'd stolen someone's vehicle, and he could have been planning anything. This happened about 11 years ago, back when I'd just broken up with a girlfriend of mine. Let's call her Y. About a week after our breakup, I started to get these strange texts from an unknown number. Let me just sum up the very first message they sent me. "Hi, this is T. I'm someone that works with Y. I've heard that you've dated her before, and I'm quite infatuated with her. I'm wondering if maybe you could give me some advice or something?" My first reaction was, what the hell? Who the hell does that? Why would this guy even know my number or about my relationship at all? And why text me randomly with such a creepy vibe? It was actually a bit longer than my summary. It was much more in-depth about his love for my recent ex. I thought about just ignoring it, but by that point I had a couple beers on board, so I decided to reply. Honestly, I found it kind of funny in a way. I said something like, "I haven't been in touch with Y, but you know that this might not be the best timing. Still, if you like her that much, I guess it's up to you. Let her know however you want to." I got a reply about an hour later. Thank you very much for your encouragement. I'm so grateful. I'll do my best." As you might have guessed, I didn't reply to that one. From then on, I got a text from this random guy every single day. It was always so cringy as well. "Thank you so much for your words of encouragement. They really give me the strength and courage I need to step up." I didn't reply to any of these sorts of texts, obviously, but this guy would text me even if I never replied. It was always telling me this ongoing story. "I summoned the strength to speak to her at work today. We had a big talk. It was really great." Another one came through after. "She bumped into me on the way to work. It was so great, my friend. We talked about all sorts of stuff besides work." I didn't really need to know all this stuff, and this guy just sounded kind of weird. There was something strange about the way he was phrasing these things. Again, I didn't reply. I can't lie, it was sort of intriguing for a while to get daily reports of some random guy's life. It was around this point when the context of these texts changed abruptly though. Why doesn't Y notice how I feel about her? She must have loads of boyfriends or guy friends or whatever. So why does she never pay attention to me? Why do they always laugh at me when I try to speak to her? God, I hate girls with loads of male friends. Shit, I thought. What have I gotten myself into? I should have told this guy to leave me alone ages ago. Before I could even think of what to do, he sent me another text. "I just thought of a great idea, my friend. I'm gonna get some guys together and have them attack her on the way home from work tonight, and then I'll jump in and save her. That'll really get her attention on me, won't it?" The way me and Y ended things was bad, don't get me wrong, but that still didn't mean I wanted some weird guy to stalk and obsess about her or get some people to fucking attack her. I had to let her know what was going on. I sent her a text and explained everything about her coworker's plans for her after the night shift, about everything else he'd said too. I even offered to come pick her up and take her home. The reply was unexpected to say the least. "The guy you're talking about doesn't work here. I don't have any male coworkers. The only male coworker I have is the owner of the store. Hey, don't worry about it. I'm leaving with some friends tonight and there are some police nearby anyway, so I'm sure it'll be fine." It was quite a relieving message, if not a bit cold. I was glad she would be safe. but the guy who was emailing me was genuinely making my skin crawl now. If he didn't even work with her, how did he know all this stuff about me and her? I sent him a text. "Hey, look you creep, I told Y about your little plan, so don't lay a finger on her. Got it?" He didn't reply. When it started to get dark outside, I started to get a bit twitchy. I was thinking of my ex working the night shift. I was also thinking of that weird guy. I was worried that something bad was going to happen. I checked my phone over and over to see if he'd replied, but the rain had started to fall. It soon passed 11 p.m., his proposed time of attack when she was supposed to be getting off work. My phone was still silent. Nothing from him or my ex. I began to relax when suddenly I got a call from my ex. I answered it immediately. She was crying and in a panic. Whoa, what's going on?" "I'm on my way home and I'm by the station. A guy has been following me the whole time." Now I was in a panic too. I'm too scared to look behind me. The line then abruptly cut. My doorbell rang. My heart was racing. I ran to the peephole. It was my ex at the door. I quickly opened it and let her in. She lived around the same area as me, so I guess that's why she immediately came to my house. She was as white as a ghost and was crying, covered in rainwater. She told me to lock the door immediately. "Did the person following you see you go into my apartment?" I asked. "I don't know, I guess so, maybe. He was right behind me when I got here." I ran out to my balcony and looked outside. There was no sign of anyone out there. I grabbed my phone and called T's number. They picked up right away. "I'm calling the police. I have all the proof I need to show them. If you try anything stupid tonight, you'll regret it." I couldn't hear a single word in response, just the sound of the rain crashing down in the background and heavy breathing on the other end. Then the line cut. I knew that he must be out there somewhere in the rain. I know I should have contacted the police sooner, but when you're so young, it's the last thing you want to do. I was also a bit of a dick and troublemaker when I was that age, so I was scared of getting in trouble with the police. I sat with Y and kept her company all night. I convinced her to go to work the next day and to be ready to go to the police if anything strange happened. We shot nervous glances at the door all night while the rain lashed at the windows. I was expecting to hear something outside or the doorbell ringing at any moment, but thankfully the whole night passed by without further incident. The next day, I got a huge text. It went something like this. "I'm truly sorry. I don't actually work with your ex. I went to her shop and saw her there and fell in love at first sight. A couple days later, I was at a local restaurant and I saw her there with her friends. They were talking about that recent breakup you guys had. She didn't seem to be very fazed by it. They were all drinking and they got up to go to the bathroom, so I took my chance. I went over and I went into her phone and I grabbed your number. I'm sorry for everything I did. After this weird confession, nothing happened. I didn't hear from T again. Nor did Y either. I don't know the guy's true identity or even what he looked like, so I couldn't do anything about him. I couldn't report him. I couldn't warn anybody about his behavior for the future. All I could do was give the number to the police. I did, of course, but nothing came of it. This didn't impact me as much as it did Y, but so far it's the creepiest thing that's ever happened to me. So, to T, on behalf of myself and Y, I hope we never interact with each other again. I work as a mechanic for a car shop in my town. It's a locally owned and run repair place that started up many years ago. The shop runs out of an old warehouse and has a bunch of broken down cars and pieces of cars sitting outside. They're stored in what we refer to as the scrap yard. That's just the name we give it though. Most of the scrapyard is cars waiting for parts to arrive. Anyway, my job for the past 2 years has been to order and keep track of stock that goes in and out. The best time to do this is when it's not busy, so overnight I guess. I kind of doubled as a security guard too, because it wasn't uncommon for crazy people or teenagers to jump the fence and try to mess with or steal stuff from the scrapyard. On this night, I got into work at 8 o'clock. I talked to my boss for a bit before he left for the night, and then it was just me in the warehouse, all alone. It was raining outside, so inside the building it was really noisy. It was also calming in a way though. I did my usual routine of going through the orders that the mechanics had sent in and checking what had been used during the day. There was nothing out of the ordinary, but 2 cars needed to order very specific parts, and for one of them, the mechanic didn't write down the model year. Sometimes that can be really important. I got up from the desk and walked through the warehouse, looking for this gray Nissan Versa so I could confirm what part I needed to obtain. As I got to the end of the warehouse though, I still couldn't find it anywhere. I sighed, knowing it had to be somewhere in the scrapyard, which of course was on the one day it happened to be raining out. I went back to my desk and after a brief coffee break, I grabbed my jacket and flashlight and went to the back door. The rain seemed to have really picked up since I was last outside. In the distance, I could immediately see the car I was looking for, hiding between a few other vehicles. I stepped out into the rain and started walking over, turning on my flashlight. As I got about to the center of the scrapyard though, a sudden movement of something in front of me made me stop in my tracks. It was just at the edge of my light. I wasn't able to see much, but it looked like a person hiding behind one of the cars and moving around. The rain covered up any sound I may have heard, so all I could tell was this brief glance. I stood there and held my flashlight, waiting to see any more movement. I called out to them, "Hello, I saw you just move, so get out of here already." I was hoping it was just some kid messing around. I took a few steps closer to where I'd seen them and yelled again for them to leave the property. I didn't see anything moving. I moved closer and started to look around the whole area. I figured that whoever it was must have left at my warning. Honestly, I was a bit relieved I didn't have to call the cops or do anything drastic. I quickly walked over to the Nissan and wrote down the model year, then jogged back to the warehouse and went inside. I took off my jacket and sat back at the desk, filling out the rest of the info and sending through the order. I was there for another half hour, filling out more of those order requests. Once I finished with that, I had to do the stock counting and the actual warehouse part of the building. By then, it was probably 1 a.m. or so. I walked along the shelves and checked what everyday products and parts had been used up. While making my way down the first set of shelves, though, a sudden loud thud rang through the warehouse. Then the lights went out. I stood there with my eyes wide open, staring into the dark abyss around me. I couldn't see anything, but between the sound of the rain hitting the roof, I could hear footsteps walking through the building. I stared in the direction of where this sound was coming from, and I could immediately tell that whoever this was, they were coming right for me. I didn't know what to do at this point. I was sure that whoever was in here had shut the power off. But why were they here in the first place? I didn't know, and without light, I couldn't even run away. All I could do was listen to the footsteps grow louder as I stared into the pitch black. I hoped they didn't know exactly where I was. They were only about 10 feet away when I heard them stop. After a moment, I heard a box open and things being shifted around. The footsteps then began going away again. I was holding my breath the whole time. After 30 seconds, it was completely silent. I waited for a few minutes before finally taking my phone out and calling 911. I then used the flashlight on it to move toward the breaker room. I found the switch flipped off and switched the power back on. Looking through the warehouse with the police, all that had been left were wet shoe prints going throughout the building and out the back door. It seemed like the person that had been out in the scrapyard had slipped in while I was outside. The door was still unlocked. Then they obviously stole a bunch of gear. Even though they didn't have the intent to hurt me likely, who knows what could have happened if they knew I was standing only a few feet away from them. Without me ever getting a good look at them, there's no telling if they came armed and willing to do anything. This happened when I was in school. It was summer break. I always loved going to see my cousins during the time off from school. My family and I always went to visit them, as they only lived in the next city over. I was really looking forward to seeing my cousin. He was a little bit older than me, but he was always up for playing fun games with me. Unfortunately, he was not around this time, so I had to play alone. I didn't mind playing alone since my cousin's house backed onto a forest with a small mountain. It was really great there. Always fun to be had, looking for bugs or exploring the area. I decided to go exploring on this day. I really wanted to go to the top of the mountain all by myself, so I set my sights on that summit and started marching uphill. Along the way, though, I noticed a curious dirt path leading off to the side. I was curious to see what might be here. I noticed there was an abandoned-looking house somewhere further down this path. Well, I thought this would be an awesome place to make a base. My cousin would love it too, so I decided to get a bit closer and check it out further. I was so excited that I had found this place. I crept up close to the exterior of this house and peeked into a broken window to see what was inside. I saw something so weird it will stay with me for the rest of my life. It was all decayed in there, of course, but there was one single chair that looked brand new, and in front of that chair were these life-sized cutouts of various famous people. The way they had been placed made me think someone had to have deliberately set them up around the chair like an audience or something. There was a baseball player cutout, an anime one, an actress. The way they were all positioned around this single chair was as if they were in conversation with each other and someone else. It looked as though whoever was in the chair wanted to be the center of attention. The house itself was a mess. Broken glass, the walls were all chipped and damaged, yet this chair and these cutouts were brand new. Needless to say, this discovery was off-putting and more than a little bit creepy. My gut told me that something was off about this, so I decided to get back to my cousin's house. As I was getting ready to leave, my skin went cold despite the hot summer day. Something innate inside me was telling me I had to get out of here right now. I began to scramble back up toward the mountain path. And that's when I noticed something I hadn't before. I had gotten a bit up the dirt road, and I had a more aerial view of the cardboard cutouts in the house. One of them really stood out to me. It seemed to be moving by itself for some reason. I didn't run, as I was fascinated by what I was seeing. I stood there watching it, and cold sweat began amassing on my brow. I was beginning to realize what I was witnessing. I looked closer, and my heart paused for a moment when I saw a man hiding behind one of the cutouts in the corner. I could see his arms and legs, but not his face. As soon as I figured out there was a man there, I ran as fast as I could back to my cousin's house. Because I was young and didn't quite understand what had happened or if I would be in trouble, I kept the incident to myself. If I hadn't noticed a man had been there, or if my gut instinct was off that day, I might have gone back to that house at a later point by myself again, and who knows if I'd be alive to tell this story. Now that I'm a bit older, I've had some time to think about how strange that situation was. What was the purpose of those cutouts? Were they there to lure people in? Did the man tell naive people or children they could meet celebrities or something? If someone went into that house in the middle of those woods, then what would he have done to them? I still think about it from time to time. I worked for a packaging company at the central office, along with owners' eldest daughters who helped to run the company. I had worked there for over a year, and I really loved my job. Really nice people to work for. Things all changed, though, when a temp went in for his interview. I'll call him C. I would assist my manager with the interviews by sitting in and taking notes. When C walked in the interview room, my manager shook his hand and greeted him. As he was greeting her back, though, he kept staring at only me, which I found a bit odd. We said a quick hello/greeting as well, and the interview started. C got the job and was shown around the office, and would be starting the next day. The following day, work started off like always, busy but in a good way, nothing too hectic that I couldn't handle. C came into the office, and I, along with a coworker, showed him the inventory he'd be helping to care for, and introduced him to the rest of the crew and people he would be working with. We showed him the computer system, gave him instructions on how to do what he needed to do. Everything was going pretty well. He was polite, got straight to work, and my coworker and I went back to our areas. I felt like kind of a jerk for feeling the way I did the day before when I'd initially met him. At the end of the day, heading to my car, I was surprised to see C standing right next to it. I asked him if he needed something. He told me he wanted to apologize for the day before, all the staring. He didn't mean to be rude. I told him it was fine, no harm, no foul. He asked if he could make it up to me by taking me out to lunch tomorrow. I told him that although I did appreciate the offer, he didn't have to make up anything to me. Plus, since I was always busy at work, I normally eat at my desk anyway. That wasn't true, but the excuse seemed to work on him. A couple of weeks later, my coworker H, who I'm also good friends with, asked me what exactly was going on between C and I. I was confused as to what she was talking about. She told me that C was spreading all these rumors about me, that we were romantically involved and there was a lot of chemistry between us. Now I was really confused and freaked out. I didn't see how he could mistake me giving him the inventory list as flirting, seeing as how we barely even talked otherwise. That same day, apparently he became aware I knew what he was saying. That day I had to leave early, since I was going to watch my young niece who was sick, while my sister went to work. I was already stressed out about my sick niece, so I decided to put off dealing with him to the next day. About 2 hours after I got home, I was alone with my 5-year-old niece, when suddenly I heard the doorbell ring. I peeked out the window, only to see that C was outside. I told my niece to go lock herself in the bedroom and hide just in case. I opened the front door, the security door beyond that still being locked, and I proceeded to flip out on him. What made him think it was okay to show up to my home unannounced? He started telling me he wanted to explain himself. As he started telling me his BS story, I asked him how he even knew my address in the first place. He then got real quiet and really serious. He told me he was on his way home when he passed by my house and recognized my car. I called out his BS. My sister had taken my car since hers had a booster seat, and since I needed to help organize his employee file, I knew he didn't live anywhere near me at all. I told him he needed to leave right now. He started raising his voice, telling me I was hurting his feelings because I couldn't see how much he liked me, and how stupid I was to not see what a great catch he is. As he was insisting on talking to me, my brother-in-law pulled up into the driveway. Now, he was a big guy. Although he has a teddy bear heart, he can be very intimidating. C turned around and saw him there, and I could just see the color drain from his face immediately. He told C to scram, and I'd never seen someone take off that fast. I called my manager and told her what just happened. She told me not to worry. She'd tell the temp agency he was no longer allowed at my work. I didn't see him anywhere after that day. 2 days later, I got called into my manager's office. Apparently, she'd had a weird feeling when I called her and decided to review the security cameras. Turns out that on the day he was interviewed, he stayed outside the premises. He waited for about 6 hours, and he finally left after I was leaving for the day. That explains how he knew which vehicle was mine. He most likely followed me, and that's how he knew where I lived as well. What is up, guys? Blue Spooky here. I know it's been quite a while since I did an outro. If you guys like this video, please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe if you feel so inclined. If you have any feedback about the video itself, please be sure to leave it in the comments below. I always do read the comments, although with me recording every day, I don't have as much time to respond to them anymore. If you guys have a story you would like to send in yourselves, please be sure to look in the description below the video. There will be links to my Facebook, Twitter, and Gmail accounts. You can go ahead and send me a message on any of those, and I'll try to get to your story as soon as possible. If you do decide to send in a story, please be sure to include in the tagline what the name of the story is, the type of story if it has one, and how you'd like to be credited in the description of the video the story appears in. Also, please be sure to include as much detail as you feel comfortable with, and as much correct grammar as possible, to ensure the best chances of your story appearing in a video. I think that's about it for this video here. Let me know if you guys have any thoughts about the channel or anything, and thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys have a great day.